In the greater Northeast Ohio area, hope and healing are closer than you think. At Emerge Counseling Ministries, our licensed faith-based counselors walk with you through life's challenges with compassion and understanding. 97% of our clients would refer us to a friend. 98% truly felt heard, and 84% said they're seeing real improvement. Let your journey begin today. Visit emerge.org.
Welcome to the ExEm podcast. Here is your host, mental health therapist, Matthew Kanabe.
I am very hard on myself, dealt with severe anxiety.
And it made me feel like a monster. I didn't have the energy to care.
There was just nothing more but to face what I had been running from.
I'm already an anxiety-filled mess.
It's just love. Like, it just goes back to love.
Well, we certainly are all busy. Oftentimes we burn the candle at both ends. Eventually, guess what though? It catches up with us. We're burnt out. We're done. We've got no energy for things that normally bring us joy. If you or someone close to you has felt that way, buckle up because this conversation was tailor-made for you. Our guest is a like-minded therapist who hosts her own podcast on similar topics to the ExEm podcast as well, and has a passion for people who are hurting. She has 2 girls, very similar to mine. She's an expert in the areas of compassion, fatigue, and burnout. Please welcome to the show, Laura Howe.
Hey, I am so pumped to be here. Great to have this conversation. It's such a valuable conversation. And it is amazing to connect with other people who are like-minded and have passions that align with yours. They're out there. There are those of us out there. And when we connect, it's like, oh, this is so great. Like best friends right away.
That's right. That's right.
My background is a clinical mental health social worker, but I'm from Canada. So our licensing is a little bit different. So up here, we call it registered. So we are registered social workers. And been working in the mental health and addictions field for about 17 years before I started Hope Made Strong. And we'll get into that. And I have 2 kids. They are teenagers. Lord help me. We are in the thick of it, let me tell you. And this is my first summer. We're recording just at the beginning of the summer where I have become taxi. I don't know. Other people have told me about this stage of life that they want nothing to do with you except your ability to drive them places. And so this is a new reality for me. But I'm trying to take advantage of those times in the car with them because that's pretty much all I got at this point with 2 teenage girls.
Yeah, that's good. And so you are in Ontario, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you and I first connected, we had a great conversation. And like I mentioned, you and I are invested in a lot of similar things. But can you talk a little bit about your journey into the mental health world? What did that look like? And what drew you to that?
Yeah, I kind of fell into it. I think that's a similar story for many caregivers. So growing up in the church, loving Jesus, family went to church, nothing too abnormal about that, just kind of the regular average person. But then just have this passion to help others. I just want to help someone. And I'm going to be honest with you, Matthew, I am way too high maintenance to be on the missions field. I recognize I own that. I have no interest in dealing with the insides of people. So the healthcare field is off the table. And I don't particularly like, much to my conservative background, like spending time with other people's children. So teaching was just not really an option that I was looking forward to. So social work was kind of a default, to be honest. I didn't know what to expect. I have family members and loved ones who suffer with mental illness. And I myself have gone through seasons of anxiety and depression. And so that was always close to heart and seemed the most familiar. So landed in social work with the full intention of doing community development and capacity building. But had like many others, a student loan and I met a boy. So, got a job, started a family, and, God always knows, right? God always aligns things or uses things for our benefit. And my journey, as a clinical social worker, man, ups and downs and spins and dips and highs and all of the things that many people experience. But there was a definite acute season of burnout and compassion fatigue that I experienced. And we can go more into that if you would like, that experience of burnout and compassion fatigue, because those are two different things. And then God redeemed that experience, and I was able to start Hope Made Strong, which is an organization that helps churches.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Hope Made Strong, because I think it would be beneficial for our audience to get a better idea of kind of what you've been doing there and what the resources are that you're providing, and what does that look like? And if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, I would love to. So one of my last roles as a social worker, because I don't practice anymore. I keep my registration and license up, but I have not practiced in 5 years. But one of the last roles that I did was developing the peer support program. So then in Canada, there's a lot of research and a large shift or a movement to understanding the value of peer support. So peers are those with lived experience. If you've gone through suffering, if you've gone through struggle and have wisdom to share, regardless of where you are in your journey of recovery, mental health, addictions, chronic illness, you name it. It's always a journey. It's always a process. And the value that you have as a peer can add tremendously to someone else's recovery journey. So there's a lot of research on this. Yeah. And so while developing that program of bringing in peer supports and professionalizing and valuing, I should say, valuing the skills and wisdom that peers have, developing programs and trainings and supervision of peers in the community. And I was noticing that this was happening organically in the church. Our churches are filled with people who've gone through suffering, whether it's addictions or grief or diagnosis or chronic illness. And the care or the support to the community was happening organically, whether it was in the prayer line or in the small groups or in the conversations after service. And so what was happening organically, we were trying to manufacture in the community. And I was thinking, okay, if there is some way that we would be able to learn from one another, that the church can learn some practices that the community is really good at, the policy procedure, the ethical, the documentation, the confidentiality, the skills of caring, not clinical skills, but the skills of just showing up in the ministry of presence. Mm-hmm. And if the community could learn how to engage relationships and community in an organic way that fosters hope, then man, wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? And so that's kind of what started this journey of Hope Made Strong, and what we really focus on now. There are a huge number of programs like curriculums and Bible studies and small groups and recovery programs that are available in the community. And I mean available to the church, and I'm a big advocate of that. But what is happening between the semesters, after the 8 weeks is done? How are we showing up and caring for our people? Mm. And so I say that the Hope Made Strong is the glue of all the different programs. It's the glue that keeps people together. It's shifting from programs of care to being intentional of building a culture of care in your church. And the church is very strategic around youth. There's usually someone in charge, and there's a schedule, and there's a budget line, and there's procedures on how to go about that. They do that for kids ministry and new believers and membership and all kinds of areas, but very rarely, or I'm discovering that it's rarely done around care. Care is kind of an afterthought where people are running around putting out fires. And so we come alongside churches to equip them with the strategies and the systems and the skills so that they can care for their people well. They can do it in an ethical way and using best practice, and they can care for people well, as in we're not burning out our volunteers while trying to run these programs. And so that's what Hope Made Strong is. We equip churches to develop sustainable and scalable care ministries.
We'll be right back.
In a world where life can feel overwhelming, there's a place in the greater Northeast Ohio area where people find peace hope, and healing. Emerge Counseling Ministries. For over 50 years, Emerge continues to be a trusted faith-based counseling center offering professional mental health care with a foundation in Christian values. Whether you're struggling with anxiety, depression, grief, or simply feeling stuck, our licensed counselors are here to walk alongside you. And the impact speaks for itself. 97% of our clients say they would recommend Emerge to a friend. 98% say they truly felt understood and heard by their counselor. And 84% report that their issue is improving through the care with us. At Emerge, you're not just a case number, you're a whole person. And we are here to support your journey towards healing and growth. It's confidential, compassionate, Christ-centered care. Learn more or schedule an appointment today at emerge.org. That's EMERGE.org. Remember, you don't have to walk alone. I think that is so smart. Like, that is really, really a great, almost ministry to what the church is doing. And I can't tell you how many times I have talked with pastors about issues, even just related around funerals. How do we care for those who are suffering without bringing in simple cliches? Right. You know, educating people on, you don't have to have a master's degree in clinical counseling to care for those who are struggling, but you have to have wherewithal to be able to communicate so you're not wounding them. So you're not saying things that drives them further into pain. You know, and we know the adages, you know, heaven gained an angel today, or, you know, all of those types of things. And one of the things I share with clients a lot in these types of situations is just teaching them to hold space and just be present. You don't have to have the most eloquent response to somebody's situation, but I think being able to be comfortable enough to sit in the space, to sit with somebody who's struggling, because I think a lot of times the adages and the things that we say, it's because we're uncomfortable. We're uncomfortable with their pain. And so we try to just shut it down. And so as you're talking, I'm like, man, that is such a needed resource, not in the church, but really for everywhere, but certainly the church as well, because we want to be the church at large, those who go into those spaces to care for those who need that care. Does it resonate with you?
Absolutely. I think the vast majority, I would say almost all churches, have great intentions. They want to care. They want to be a community of hope and healing. They want to. But the struggle is, how do we do that? How do we do that when our resources are in such high demand? There's such a huge competition, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean in reality, between all of the programs and all of the ministries at our church. So how can we show up for people? How can we foster that culture when the demands are endless, and when the intensity of those demands and needs in our community are growing exponentially? And this is why we say at Hope Me Strong, it's not a matter, we don't want to prescribe or say you have to do X, Y, and Z to have a care ministry. It's like you need the focus of care ministry is fostering belonging, purpose, and hope. Those are the three components of a care ministry. If you can create spaces of belonging where people feel safe, that they can show up, that they're seen, they're missed when they're gone. And if you can create a culture where there's purpose is engaged, where someone feels valued and dignity is extended, where someone's gifts and skill sets are seen as valuable rather than their butt in a seat or their tithing or how they can volunteer, that the church fosters someone's purpose. And if we can be a place where we can spread hope, and hope is shared through stories, and where we can say, hey, if they've done it, if they've gone through, if the Lord is, faithful for them, the Lord is faithful for me. And that God's faithfulness looks very different when you're experiencing suffering. There's a depth of maturity and resilience that comes with that. And so really, it's not about meeting all the needs, because it's impossible. No church can do that. So let's just take the pressure off of that. There's no way one
Yep.
church can do all things.
Yep.
But what the church can do is create a culture where belonging, purpose, and hope are fostered.
That's really good. The concept of hearing other people's stories, I think is such a part of who we are as human beings. I talk a lot about on this podcast, the island effect. And when you feel like you're the only one, you're the only one that's gone through this, the only one experiences this, it creates a hypothetical prison around you. But the moment we share our stories, I mean, this is why podcasts like what I do, what you do are important, because we're just bringing to light more and more people's stories. So that the moment you hear them, it gives you this sense of going, okay, maybe I do have the ability to do that. And I remember being, I went back to get my master's. I was an older guy. I was in my mid 30s, and I was in classroom with a bunch of 20 somethings who just graduated their undergrad. And that first week, almost every day had a panic attack. Like, what am I doing? This is stupid. I have no business being in school, and I hadn't been in school in years and years and years. And then that Friday of the first week, we had an exam in front of us. I started seeing black dots. I'm like, I just was like, I'm going to stand up and just walk out and let's call it a day. And then something hit me. I realized in that moment, thousands, if not tens of thousands of other people completed this program. So why in the world couldn't I? It was just like a moment of common sense of going there. What is the difference between me and the tens of thousands of people who have graduated this program for years and years and years and years? And all of a sudden, that's all the inner dialogue I needed. And it all just kind of went. And I had a massively successful master's program, and I loved it. I miss it. I want to go back to school. But it was like really in that moment, it was so overwhelming until it just dawned on me going, you're not the only one that's ever done this. In fact,
not alone.
25 other people standing around you or sitting around you in desk also doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tease this real quick because we're going to land on it in a little bit. You have a summit that I think is going to speak into a lot of brilliant different things. And I want our listeners to hang on because we're going to give all the details to that and really share what's going to be going on and who's going to be doing that. But to get into that, you and I had a great conversation about burnout and compassion fatigue. And I love when you say, hey, they're not the same thing. So if you wouldn't mind kind of going into a little bit of your wheelhouse of these two things, teasing those out, and then let's talk about it for a little bit, because it is such a, I don't want to say hot topic, but it is something that we're dealing with on a regular basis in the mental health world. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little bit nervous at becoming cliche and losing its meaning, much similar to that of, say, like trauma or OCD. Yes. But I'm just thrilled that people are willing to talk about it, because the more we talk about it, the more people can recognize that, like you said, you're not alone. You're not alone in this. And so burnout and compassion fatigue are two different things. The first difference is burnout can be experienced by anyone and is experienced by everyone. There's no prerequisites to experience burnout. And it's composed of three different things. And if you're experiencing these three different things, you're probably experiencing symptoms of burnout. And those three things are hopelessness, helplessness, and prolonged stress. And so hopelessness is this sense that it's always going to be this way. Nothing is going to change. This is my lot in life. This is what I signed up for. And as a social worker, this is how I felt. And I think this is felt by a lot of ministry leaders when you're like, I felt called into ministry. And so this is what I am. This is my future. This is my present. This is forever. This is what I'm experiencing. I'm caring for others, and there's no hope of change. Helplessness is the feeling that I have no control or agency, that I don't have a way to influence. There's expectations on my time, on my decisions, on who I am as my identity, and I don't have the ability to change or influence those things. And then prolonged stress is the stresses of relationships, finances, time, and health. And when you combine hopelessness, the feeling like nothing is ever going to change, the helplessness is I have no way to control, influence, or steer this in a different direction. And the stressors that come with ministry, then you can see how this would impact everyone. This would impact a student who feels like this project or this assessment is never going to change and I have to do this, or a senior, or in any position or job, anyone can experience burnout. But compassion fatigue is different. Compassion fatigue impacts caregivers, professional caregivers, family caregivers, ministry caregivers, those who are in compassion giving fields. And if you are extending compassion to others, then this is a workplace hazard of experiencing compassion fatigue. It's extending compassion without refueling, without taking the time to refuel, without having space to refuel. And I very rarely know a caregiver who is in the field professionally and also isn't personally, whether you're in ministry and you're caring for your elderly parents, or maybe you're a teacher and you also have a family at home. So when you are caring all the time, you lose the ability to have empathy for others, as well as the have empathy and compassion for yourselves. That's what's compassion fatigued. You're such an amazing compassionate giver that you're fatigued as a result. You lose the compassion for others, meaning this happened to me because I've had some significant experience in this department, unfortunately. But I would come home from work, and my work was with those who were homeless and struggling with addictions and some significant trauma in their life. And my husband's like, "Oh, I had such a terrible day at work. The computer was broken and the Wi-Fi was down, and I couldn't print anything." And I was just like, "Oh, you sweet, sweet princess." I was supporting someone who didn't have food or a house and was telling me the story about how they're having flashbacks because they experienced sexual assault. And so I had very little compassion for others because of the intensity of suffering that I was exposed to. Or it could show up in maybe you're hearing the same thing over and over again. So we'll take a youth pastor, for example, where you hear of the breakup story over and over and over. Or maybe Sunday after service, someone's coming up to you and telling their story, and you've heard the story 500 times. And rather than feeling compassion and empathy for the person, you're thinking about, what am I going to make for lunch? And so I'm not saying this is a sin or a failure. What I'm saying is that you're a deeply compassionate person and you're experiencing compassion fatigue because of the caregiving work that you do, and you don't have enough time to refuel.
Mm-hmm. So, Laura, can you be both?
Absolutely.
Can both be
100%.
true at the same? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
really, the distinguishing factor is one is a workplace hazard or a side effect of caregiving, and the other one is a side effect of being human.
Yeah. Yeah. As you were talking about burnout, how do we distinguish burnout from depression?
Well, I think the symptoms are quite similar. Depression is a clinical diagnosis. And so a burnout is a situational experience. And those lines are gray. They're blurry lines. Absolutely. Can you have situational depression as a result of burnout? Absolutely. Do you have the diagnosis of burnout, of depression? That is above my pay grade. That is something to discuss. But the way I see it, it's the symptoms, the impact to your quality of your life and your life that really is where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah, I think that as you were describing that, I could see listeners kind of going, wow, that sounds a lot like depression. But I also think, you and I talked prior to this, you and I both speak on burnout quite a bit. And, burnout is more, is different than depression in my mind, because it's almost like you ran a marathon, you've been running a marathon, and you get to the point where your legs just won't go anymore. And it's like you've ran out of energy.
Yeah.
Where depression is more of a mood and a state of being. It wasn't necessarily correlated to, the exhaustion that you've been going through over the last month. But at the end, when burnout is taking place and you're in a clinical depression, they do potentially can look similar.
Very much.
You're depleted. It's really kind of how we got here.
Yeah.
Which is the difference.
Yeah. And I think from my experience, I remember in the thick of it thinking, I don't remember the last time I actually laughed or felt joy. Wow. I don't remember the last time I felt that way when I was in the thick of it with burnout and compassion fatigue. So I would say that's very similar to depression. But the difference is that if you relieve one of those three things, you're going to feel relief almost immediately. If you feel, that's that if you have a vacation coming up, okay, you feel hope because there's an end, there's an opportunity for rest, or someone asks your opinion on, and you have the opportunity to change maybe your hours, or maybe you have Monday off and you work so you can have some control of your situation, then the relief is felt almost immediately. And that is not the case with depression. Like you said, it's a state of being rather than a situational impact.
So what are some of the things that you would notice that there are signs, flags, warnings as we're going that we need to be more aware of before you get to the point where you're in complete, end of the line? I'm definitely burnt out. Like, are there indicators as we're going through life to be mindful of?
Absolutely, there is. You think the green, yellow, red scale. Green, you're good to go. Yellow, you're not doing great, but you're still trudging along. Red, you are in crisis mode. You're shutting down. The impact is seeping into other areas of your life, flooding into other areas of your life. And so we want to stay out of the red. There's going to be moments of time in the yellow, but we're always trying to strive to stay in the green. And there absolutely are warning signs. And some of the warning signs, there's a number of behavioral, psychological, or emotional warning signs, but one of them is numbness. And this is specifically around compassion fatigue. There's a numbness. You no longer feel that empathy towards others, right? It's some of it is protective, or we say it's protective. Where people are like, oh, what if I never cry anymore when I'm with people? Okay, there's a numbness there. So we have to be aware of that. You just notice that. It doesn't mean, you're in harm's way, but just notice that is happening and that's shifting for you. Another one is an over-exaggerated sense of need. I hear this when people say, the Lord put me in their life for a reason. And that may be true, but you have an over-exaggerated sense of wanting to rescue or save someone. And as a result, you work you work after hours, you skip lunch, you don't take vacation, you come in when you're sick, you ignore your own well-being needs for the sake of others because only you are able to help that other person. That's another one. There's a vast number of ones. You're quick to anger, decision fatigue. I remember after work going into the grocery store and being like, what am I here for? And standing in the bread aisle being like, or cereal or any aisle, and just be like, I cannot make decisions. Like you have no ability. So there's compassion fatigue is it's kind of like, something's wrong, but you just can't put your finger on it. It's not clinical. Like, you don't think you need a diagnosis or medication, but yet you're not your best. You're not showing up the best for your people that you support or your family. And quite frankly, for yourself, you neglect yourself in many different areas. So, yeah.
That's good. I talk a lot, especially with people in ministry, about finding that joy. And joy isn't so contingent on happiness or whatever. Joy is a state of being.
Yeah.
Paul was experiencing joy while he was in prison. He found contentment with who he was in Christ in those moments. Now, I've worked with pastors for many years that have been called to ministry. And if you're at a point where you're like, I don't want to do this, Your
Mhm.
joy has been taken. The contentment has been overrun. And that's usually a pretty good indication
Yeah.
you're burnout. And, I was working with a pastor recently, a young guy, and there was like this, like identity in this concept of I only get 5 hours of sleep and I get my job done. And
Ooh.
I work 80 hours a week. And, it's like, and I told him, I was like, if you think about what you just told me, is I don't balance my life and I'm a workaholic. And
Yes.
and we make that sound pretty prideful, like it's like an identity thing. And I mentioned to him, buddy, anything that the word aholic is on the end of it, it
Generally indicates something
shouldn't
negative.
be what we're striving for,
Yeah.
But I do think there's that sense of, things can get tough and we can push.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
when you are burnt out, the desire to push isn't there anymore. The desire to the
It
joy
becomes apathy.
Exactly. That's really, really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just you lose the care, and that, it's compassion fatigue or burnout. It's the cost of caring. It is the workplace. I think of, and people think they're immune to it. I thought I was immune to it, but I use the analogy of a campfire. As much as we try to avoid the smoke when sitting around a campfire, no one enjoys that. Oh my goodness. We can't help but walking away smelling like it, right? And we can't help but having our hair and our eyes burn or our throat scratchy. And even if we lay on our pillow the next morning, our pillow smells like it,
So
right?
true.
So when you think that trauma or suffering is like the fire, no matter how hard we try, if we are surrounded by suffering, then we are going to be impacted by the suffering that we are near. And so it impacts how we think, it impacts how we see the world, it impacts our voice, we can pass it on to others if we are not mindful. And so we are all, no one is immune to this. And which is why I'm saying it is not a sin to experience these things.
Yeah.
You're experiencing things because you are a wonderful caregiver, but you're experiencing these because you have not had an opportunity to refuel. And everyone refuels differently. And there's different ways we can talk about that. Maybe that's a conversation for a different time. I'm sure you've already talked a lot about ways to build resilience and to refuel in other episodes. And so, it's a workplace hazard. It's not something you've done wrong. It's something that you've experienced because of ministry or your work.
Yeah. Well, I would like to ask you from your perspective, once we've ran through the green light, we ran through the yellow light, we're now way past the red light,
Yeah.
and we're in full blown, fatigue, we're full blown burnout. What are a couple things? I don't want to overwhelm them, 'cause I'm sure you and I could spend, like you said, we
Pretty
could
much.
make a series on things to do. But what are some of the first things that somebody should do going, if they're listening right now and going, you know what, I'm leading a church. I'm exhausted. I'm decimated.
Yeah.
I don't have it. What are some things that you would say, hey, here are first steps?
Well, I'm going to back up a little bit
Sure.
and say when you're in the green space, have a mentor or a buddy or someone that you trust to connect with to keep you in that green space. Let's talk about prevention.
Yeah.
We're not talking about clinician here. We're talking about someone to go for lunch with, go golfing with, go for walks with, just someone to debrief with. And there's a whole thing called low impact debriefing, is how to debrief with someone without breaking confidentiality and not passing along that trauma. And so this is what we do in the green to stay in the green. And if we've blown past that because it's a really heavy season and we are in the yellow, then let's talk about seeking out, a coach or a counselor, someone with wisdom to give back to you, someone much more of a mentor that will help make goals with you and hold you accountable so that you don't further slippery slope, or to get you back to the green. And then if you are full on in the red, then this is the time to seek help. And this is where I was. This is what I experienced. I could share a few more impacts of my life, like when I worked with clients and I was like, oh crap. I am in the red. And it showed up in my family. It showed up in my friendships. It showed up at my work. And that's when I knew my friends and family were suffering for probably years. But when it showed up at my work, that's when I was like, oh no, I need to do something about this. And this is when I spoke to my supervisor, and I actually took some sick leave, and I spoke to my family doctor, got some counseling. And this is where you need some help, not because you're weak or it's because you have not had opportunity to rest. So you need to do that rest. And so the first couple of things obviously is to connect and talk with someone. Build connection. We are made to connection. It is not good that man is alone. Like, it's Genesis, right? And we talked about that loneliness and the isolation and the shame that can come from that. So talk and connect with someone. That's number one. Number two, oh goodness, I have 7 here that I'm looking at right now on my list. So I am going to pick self-care, and I am going to classify what I mean by that, because we often say self-care and we think like, going golfing, getting your nails done, or going to book club is self-care. I don't mean that. I mean eat, sleep, move.
There you go.
Eat, sleep, move. That is self-care. That's meeting your needs.
That's right.
And so eat, sleep, move, eat food, real food at a table at appropriate times, sleep 7 to 9 hours. I've heard studies recently. I'm a woman in my 40s. I've heard studies recently that women need up to 9 hours of sleep. So I am leaning on that heavy, my friend. I'm going with that one. And movement. I do not like exercise. I do not like sweating, but I do love going for walks with my dog outside. And I do love, just doing activities like gardening. So self-care is all about eat, sleep, move. And then the third one, I think it's the least attention drawn to it, is have fun. Do something that, like a hobby. I was speaking with a minister, and she was saying that, I said, what did you do when you were 8 years old? Like, what was fun to you? Was it Lego? Buy Lego. Was it riding bikes? Ride your bike. Was it building forts? Build a fort. And she said that she used to love redecorating her dollhouse. And I was like, okay, is that an option? She goes, oh my gosh, it's in my attic at my parents' house. So she went and got an old dollhouse, her old dollhouse, went to this Walmart or a scrapbooking store or somewhere, and she started just decorating. And she goes, I had so much fun. It wasn't connected to an accomplishment or a to-do list. It was for the pure enjoyment of it. Yeah. And we miss out on that. So I would say connect, eat, sleep, move for self-care, and then do something that you used to love to do when you were 8, 10 years old.
It's really good. So I want to get into your summit. Because if anybody was listening and they want more of that, and they want more tools, and they want more perspective, they want more voices to speak in this, you've developed that. And this is a perfect landing spot for anybody who might be interested in getting some more understanding and awareness on this topic, and probably many others. Let's talk, because I believe when you and I talked, this is your 6th year of putting on this event. And I'm super excited about it. It's in October 10th. Talk to us about what you've got going on.
Yeah. The Church Mental Health Summit is October 10th, which is World Mental Health Day. It is a free online conference available for those 24 hours on the 10th. There are options to continue having access to all those sessions. Those are ticketed options, but you can have free access to over 50 speakers from around the world. And this is our 6th event. So I liken this to like Costco on a Saturday morning, where every turn you get a new teaser or a new taste test, or maybe a buffet, where you get a sample, a lot of different trainings and teachings and thought leaders. We have over 50 speakers, and they are clinicians, they are pastors, there's those with lived experience, there's from organizations. And so there's a diverse and eclectic group of people who are who have created some really exceptional materials and ideas that we just offer 20-minute pre-recorded, so you can watch them at your own pace. It's like Netflix. You just log in and check them out. And but you get to hear from a lot of different speakers. We've had over this year with everyone that's added this year, we have over 300 talks in our library.
Wow.
And so and that's 300 different resources and thought leaders and people. And this is a global event. We have speakers from all over the world, in every single continent, other than, I guess, Antarctica.
Right.
But but we have speakers from all over who are passionate about mental health and faith and equipping ministry leaders to support their community, because that's what it's focused on. I ask speakers this is not a theology event. This is not a theory event, academics and clinicians. This is a practical how-tos for ministry leaders and people who are leading congregations that want to know more about mental health and want to know how they can help their people. And so on October 10th, you can sign up, or you can sign up now, actually, but you log in on October 10th and then preview it like you would like a Netflix menu.
And where do they sign up?
Oh, yes, that's important. Thanks. Churchmentalhealthsummit.com.
And I will put all of that in the show notes. And I was able to peruse through the website, and several of the speakers I'm very aware of and very excited to hear from. And I just think it's a great idea, and so glad that it's taken off and you've been able to do this for so many years, because it is so needed. And, I'm sure that you felt this way too. There's been a shift in the world, and I don't want to say everything's around, the pandemic, but prior to 2020, I think mental health issues were really kind of pushed under the rug a little bit. Like they were there, but we weren't talking about it the way maybe we're talking about it now. And now post that, there's a stigma that's kind of been removed, where people openly talk about these things. And we have summits like this that I think hopefully a lot of the shame maybe that was connected with mental health, that topic has gone away. And being able to do events like this, I think, are incredible. And I hope it's a really massively successful event for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what's changed, what I have noticed, is that it used to be us and them who struggled, them who suffered. And now it's us. Yeah. Now we have noticed that we all have struggled. We all experience these things. And so, the stigma is still there. I think that's going to be, a thing that we will continue to work at. But there's an openness and a compassion to those who struggle, because we all have struggled. And I'm excited that churches are open to it. More and more, I'm hearing about churches who are saying we need to do something. Our people are suffering, and our people are struggling, and the community resources are not keeping up with the demands that we are noticing. And so who better but us? So we want to take away the barriers, the scariness of what mental health could or could not be, or the confusion of how do I show up? What is the role? What is the responsibility of church? We don't want to harm people, but so we don't teach us how we can help people effectively and appropriately. And that's really exciting. So that's what we're really passionate about and excited to do at the summit.
That's great. Laura, thank you so much for your time, and I'm honored to get to know you. And as you and I have prepped for this podcast, have realized we have a lot of similarities and things in common, and desires to see things in ministry and mental health and how those integrate. Like we talked about at the top of the episode, it's great to see and hear like-minded people. Thank you so much for spending your time. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
I just want to encourage people that wherever you're at, thank you for pursuing this. Thank you for being open to going into a space that might be uncomfortable for you. You're not alone. We are here for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on the contact page at Hope Made Strong, or feel free to email me, Laura@hopemadestrong.org.
So good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, Laura, greatly appreciate the work you've been doing to equip the church and educate others on the different aspects of caring. What a great thing to bring to ministries. Check out all of Laura's links in the show notes and click the link to sign up for the Church Mental Health Summit, which will be held on October 10th, directly in this episode's show notes below. Well, thank you for listening. Hey, and please give us a comment on any of the platforms you listen to these podcasts on. It really helps other people find our show. Well, until next time, or when our Savior comes, God bless.